Deuteronomy 13 1-17, through the Bible. Chapter 13. Theme: Warning against and test of false prophets. This is a very important chapter, because it deals with false prophets and false gods. When we get to chapter 18 of Deuteronomy, we will find the test that would identify a false prophet. Israel had no problem in detecting the false prophets, because they had a biblical, God-given test that surely would ferret them out. However, the chapter before us deals with the action that was to be taken against anyone who attempted to lead God's people away from Him, by introducing false religions. If there arise among you a prophet, or a dreamer of dreams, and giveth thee a sign or a wonder, and the sign or the wonder come to pass, whereof he spake unto thee, saying, Let us go after other gods, which thou hast not known, and let us serve them, thou shalt not hearken unto the words of that prophet, or that dreamer of dreams, for the Lord your God proveth you, to know whether ye love the Lord your God with all your heart, and with all your soul. Ye shall walk after the Lord your God, and fear Him, and keep His commandments, and obey His voice, and ye shall serve Him, and cleave unto Him. Deuteronomy 13 1-4. This is pertinent for today. People ask me how I explain the fact that some of the false prophets today are accurate part of the time. Or they ask me to explain how some people seem to be healed in certain meetings. Well, I don't explain it. To begin with, I think there would probably be a natural explanation in many instances, but even if there is something supernatural, God has warned that this can be accomplished through false prophets. It is well for us to mark that. God says that when a false prophet comes along and performs signs that come to pass, we are not to believe him if he denies the great truths of the Christian faith. That is the great principle which is put down here, and that is very important. And that prophet, or that dreamer of dreams, shall be put to death, because he hath spoken, to turn you away from the Lord your God, which brought you out of the land of Egypt, and redeemed you out of the house of bondage, to thrust thee out of the way, which the Lord thy God commanded thee to walk in. So shalt thou put the evil away from the midst of thee. Deuteronomy 13:5. Notice that any false prophet, who attempted to take the people into some false cult, or false religion, was to be stoned to death. Does that sound extreme? Does that sound severe? Such a false prophet is like a cancer, and a cancer must be cut out as soon as possible. I know that from personal experience. God here is the great physician, and He says the cancer must be cut out from among His people. This reveals the mind of God concerning false prophets, who lead the people to false gods and false religions. I can remember when I was a boy, that the reading of the Bible in the schoolroom was a normal procedure. I don't think it was particularly meaningful to me at that time, yet I understood it was the Word of God, and that impressed me. Today, we have let the unbeliever come in, the cults, and those who oppose Christianity and the Bible, and they have taken over so that Bible reading and prayer are no longer permitted in public schools. God laid down these rules to prevent this from happening in Israel. If one appeared in Israel, who was attempting to take God's people away from the worship of God, that person was to be put to death. Some soft-hearted and soft-headed folk will say this is too extreme. God understood how terrible it would be if false prophets were permitted to multiply and to lead Israel into idolatry. History reveals that Israel did not obey God, and they did permit this to happen. If you want to know how bad it was for God's people in that day, read the story of Ahab and Jezebel, who plunged God's people into idolatry. This brought the judgment of God upon them, so that eventually, the northern kingdom was carried into captivity. That is how serious it is. If thy brother, the son of thy mother, or thy son, or thy daughter, or the wife of thy bosom, or thy friend, which is as thine own soul, entice thee secretly, saying, Let us go and serve other gods, which thou hast not known, thou, nor thy fathers, namely, of the gods of the people which are round about you, nigh unto thee, or far off from thee, from the one end of the earth even unto the other end of the earth, thou shalt not consent unto him, nor hearken unto him, neither shall thine eye pity him, neither shalt thou spare, neither shalt thou conceal him, but thou shalt surely kill him. Thine hand shall be first upon him, to put him to death, and afterwards the hand of all the people. Deuteronomy 13:6-9. This is extreme. This is radical. This sounds like a foreign language to the soft and affluent society in which we live. It is a serious matter for a man to be the first one to throw a stone in the execution that would stone his own brother to death. That seems very severe, but ultimately, it would save many lives. When the northern kingdom went into idolatry, what happened? Literally, thousands of them were slain, and most of the survivors were taken as slaves to the brutal nation of Assyria. Wouldn't it have been better if they had stoned the false prophets, who led them into idolatry, instead of a whole multitude being slain? We see the same kind of thing in our nation today. We have so many soft-hearted and soft-headed judges, who have no Christian background whatsoever. They do not think of our laws in the Christian context, in which they were originally formulated, that is, obedience to law, and a penalty exacted for disobedience. Our judges turn criminals loose, to prey on society again. Right here in my town, a known criminal attacked 7 women in one night. Several were killed, one was raped, and others were hospitalized with severe injuries. Now, wouldn't it be wiser for the criminal to be given the utmost penalty, than for many innocent people to be murdered? God's way is the way that will save lives, and protect a host of people. I am afraid that we have become so short-sighted, that capital punishment sounds extreme to us today. And thou shalt stone him with stones, that he die, because he hath sought to thrust thee away from the Lord thy God, which brought thee out of the land of Egypt, from the house of bondage. Deuteronomy 13:10. God exacts the death penalty. Today, we feel that the death penalty is uncivilized. I guess the crowd who feels that way would call God uncivilized. I would like to ask that crowd where they got the little civilization and the little culture which they do have. All of it came from the Word of God, friends. Now, we are moving away from the Word of God, and folk think that is being more civilized. It is more dangerous to walk on the streets of the cities in the United States than it is to walk on the jungle trails of Africa. Why? Because we think the death penalty is uncivilized, and so, we have abolished it. Some time ago, as I was walking by night, on a jungle trail, in the mountain regions of Venezuela, I felt safer than I do in Los Angeles, although they said there might be a few boa constrictors around. And I noticed that nobody locked their doors. I wondered whether they should send missionaries over to us, instead of our sending missionaries to them. And all Israel shall hear, and fear, and shall do no more any such wickedness as this is among you. Deuteronomy 13:11. They were not to depart from the living and true God. As long as they would obey him, there would be blessing. However, they failed to obey him, and the judgments did come upon them. That is their story. If thou shalt hear, say, in one of thy cities, which the Lord thy God hath given thee, to dwell there, saying, certain men, the children of Belial, are gone out from among you, and have withdrawn the inhabitants of their city, saying, let us go and serve other gods, which ye have not known. Then shalt thou inquire, and make search, and ask diligently, and, behold, if it be truth, and the thing certain, that such abomination is wrought among you. Deuteronomy 13:12-14. They were not to do anything rashly. A thorough investigation must be made, and truth arrived at, before any action was to be taken. Thou shalt surely smite the inhabitants of that city with the edge of the sword, destroying it utterly, and all that is therein, and the cattle thereof, with the edge of the sword. And thou shalt gather all the spoil of it, into the midst of the street thereof, and shalt burn with fire the city, and all the spoil thereof every whit, for the Lord thy God, and it shall be an heap forever, it shall not be built again. Deuteronomy 13:15-16. Again, this is severe. A city, an entire city, would be destroyed. Suppose there was someone in that city who hadn't gone into idolatry. Had they protested? Had they just sat by and done nothing? If they had done nothing about it, they were to be judged along with the rest. There are too many Christians today who think that it is Christian to be silent. There are so many Christians who do not take a stand on important issues, even when truth is at stake. You hear the old cliché, silence is golden. Friends, sometimes it is yellow, not golden, to remain silent, and not to take a stand. The minority is to protest that which is wrong. Everything in such a city was to be completely destroyed. And there shall cleave naught of the cursed thing to thine hand, that the Lord may turn from the fierceness of his anger, and show thee mercy, and have compassion upon thee, and multiply thee, as he hath sworn unto thy fathers. Deuteronomy 13:17.